Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm just going to follow up on what Andre and Munib already described pretty in detail for what is going to be Stack's roadmap on the tech side. That is how we're going to execute and turn ideas and innovation into something that actually looks and feels like a product and that runs on chain. So before we start, in the last couple of weeks, SBDC just became feature complete. We opened withdrawals. In a couple of days, we are also going to lift the deposit cap again. And once we do that, the system is going to remain operational, meaning that as soon as there's going to be space, so as soon as somebody withdraws and leaves a bit of space for additional deposits, signers will pick it up, and that will allow continuous minting in and out of the system. So we are very happy about it. It's the completion of a long journey, and it's a stepping stone for what's ahead. What's ahead is going to be related to ensuring that we can take SBDC and bring it forward in several directions, all of which we are very, very excited about. So the first one is that right now, if you mint SBDC coming from the L1, you might not have STX, and that makes it a bit cumbersome to interact with Stacks and with its DeFi protocols. So the first thing we're going to do is to enable seamless fee sponsorship of STX through SBDC. So from the user experience, the way this is going to look like is that I don't need to be aware of the fact that there's STX underlying. I can just peg in, use my Bitcoin, turn it into SBDC, and then there's going to be somebody that on demand dynamically is going to swap a part of my SBDC into STX in order to cover for transaction fees. We are developing this by focusing on security, of course, and user experience, and we're going to be working with wallets so that the user experience feels as seamless as possible. The next thing on the roadmap is going to be about reducing as much as possible required trust assumptions for SBDC. So the first thing we want to do is to make it possible that while SBDC is at rest in your wallet, then you don't really need to trust the signer set. We're going to call this self-custodial SBDC. And it actually unlocks a couple of great use cases, one of which is completely trustless payments. And we're still designing the way the system is going to look like. But at a high level, what we want is that when you're pegging in, you don't necessarily need to trust the SBDC signers to do that. Instead, you can peg in a self-custodial way. And then you are only going to need to trust the signers the moment you want to deploy your SBDC into DeFi. We're going to roll this out iteratively, as we like to do, small, consistent improvements across the full spectrum. And we are working with institutions and custody providers so that we can bring this to market first for accredited investors, trusted investors, people that typically rely on custody providers. And then we're going to open this up to everybody. Once you have that, then you can have trustless payments. So the way this works is that SBDC is going to be at rest in your wallet, is going to be fully self-custodial, and you can link this type of operations, this type of preconditions in such a way that you can move SBDC from one wallet to the other without having to go through the SBDC signers. So you can get good liquidity, incredible UX, and very low trust requirement. And finally, we're going to focus on what happens when you deploy your SBDC into DeFi, and so on how the trust assumptions change in that sense. So when you deploy to DeFi, after you have pegged in on Stacks, you of course are trusting Stacks, the infrastructure, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be pegging in into it. In addition, you're trusting the smart contracts with which you are interacting. Well, we want to make it so that you don't need to trust anybody or anything else in order for that to happen. And we are doing that through what we call Bitcoin postconditions. So this feature is very experimental. We are still understanding the ins and the outs, but the high-level intuition, what we want to achieve is that smart contracts that are sophisticated enough, they can actually declare the set of post conditions that they want to implement on the L1, so that when you, as an investor or as a user, peg into a smart contract, funds will move on the L1 only based on some very, very specific conditions. So, for instance, you can imagine that you're pegging into a decentralized lending pool, and that the assets, they can go out of that lending pool only on several very specific conditions. So if you withdraw from them or if you are ever liquidated. And in case of a liquidation, there can be specific conditions that decide how and when this event is going to be triggered. So you can think about it as a DLC on the L1, where the oracle is the smart contract itself on the L2 that describes the specific conditions. There are a bunch of other things that we're working on. So we're implementing transaction replay in case of Bitcoin reorg. This stream of work is already in progress. We want to be code complete by the end of the month so that we can do comprehensive testing and then release it as soon as it's possible. We are collecting feedback from builders on Clarity 4. Clarity 4 is going to be our next release of the Clarity language. We're going to be focusing on adding additional opcodes that are going to make it awesome to interact with Bitcoin from STX, from Stacks. And that means basically allowing verifying blocks, transactions, and accessing more and more Bitcoin states, which is going to allow in turn to build even more impressive applications on Stacks. We are almost ready with our WASM implementation of the Clarity virtual machine. So the team is squashing the latest bugs. And the idea there is that once we are 100% feature complete with the current interpreter, we're going to allow people to basically run the Clarity virtual machine in Clarity in WASM through the WASM compiler. And we're going to keep it deactivated by default and activatable through an opt-in so that you can actually check that the virtual machine is behaving properly, and we're going to gather enough performance data and confidence to then make it the default later on. Once this is done, then we can also design and leverage that system in order to add additional languages, additional runtimes, and so on and so forth. Is going to be an important foundational step. Improved block production consistency and speed is an ongoing topic. We just released the version 0.10, which makes it 10 times faster to sync a node from Genesis. So we are always going to be releasing improvements of this type as soon as we can get them done. And on the topic of improvements, we are just about to draft the SIP for POX5, which is going to include a lot of UX improvements on stacking. This SIP is actually completely community-driven. Core developers there are just providing feedback, and they're going to help with the implementation, of course. And so that is going to make it a lot easier and a lot less prone to errors for users to stack, both as a pool operator, as a solo user, and through additional devices like Ledger. This is all in progress. There's a bunch more I would like to tell you about, but I want to keep this short. So thank you so much for listening, and reach out if you have questions.